The White House briefing scheduled for this hour as the administration takes new action to protect schools from gun violence. Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, and this is the Daily Briefing. The White House endorsing a plan which includes steering ex-military and retired cops to provide security. There is also firearms training for specially qualified school personnel and a call for Congress to strengthen instant federal background checks on gun buyers. The plan contains $50 million a year for school violence prevention programs, but does not include raising the minimum age for buying firearms to 21. The president also making a pitch to voters in Pennsylvania's 18th congressional district ahead of tomorrow's special election. The president's recent tariffs likely to have an impact on voters there.
NAFTA is under work right now, and I think they're going to be very good. And you saw what I did with the tariffs. They said, we don't want to pay tariffs. I said, let's make a deal on NAFTA. And if you make a decent deal, a fair deal for the American worker, the American people, you'll have no problem with the tariff.
A new Monmouth poll showing the district divided over the issue of tariffs. 43% think they will benefit the local economy, while 36% expect them to actually harm the region. Bill Hemmer is joining me now, and you've got all sorts of stuff on the billboard.
Well, stuff that we think will tell us a bit of a story about this election tomorrow and why it's so important, right? It's a special election. It's in the congressional district number 18 in southwestern PA. Dana, by the way, it's great to be with you this afternoon, okay? Here is how the map went in 2016. Red went for Trump and blue went for Hillary Clinton. So a lot of blue down here around Philadelphia and a lot of blue out here by Pittsburgh. And keep an eye right down here on congressional district 18. By the way, a state the president barely won, almost 68,200 votes separating him and Hillary Clinton. But again, this is our focus for congressional district 18. If we drill down, I can show you these are counties that border West Virginia and Ohio. These are counties that overwhelmingly went for the president. 69% in Greene County. It was 60% in Washington County. Westmoreland, about 64%. Allegheny County contains the city of Pittsburgh. In the southern part of that county, just ticks a little bit into congressional district 18. So there's some suburbs there, some growing suburbs, and we'll see how these people think and feel tomorrow when the vote comes down. The reason this is happening, Tim Murphy, a Republican, forced to resign from office. Danny, you think about the Republican strength in this part of Pennsylvania. The last time he ran, he was unopposed. A lot of Democrats live and work in this area, blue-collar Democrats who typically vote Republicans in. We're about to find out whether or not Congressional District 18 is as competitive as some of the polls would suggest so far that we've been watching, though, the past week or so and trying to figure out which way this is going to go. Rick Saccone is a Republican, Connor Lamb the Democrat. Both are military veterans. Rick is 60, Connor is 33, and we've got what they call a pretty tight race.
Yeah, we have an exciting race. And so the Monmouth poll that we just showed there showed different turnout scenarios with Connor Lamb looking like he could be in the lead. Of course, you never know what could happen tomorrow, and as you just pointed out, it's a big Republican district. But here's the other thing that's interesting. Come November, this actual district, the way it's drawn now, will cease to exist.
This is correct. Yes.
So how do you think about what's going to happen then?
Whoever wins in this race will run in a different district, the way they're redrawing the maps. So we'll see what happens in November. But this will give us an indication about what people are feeling 18 months after they went overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. And I should point out, in 2012, Mitt Romney won the same district by 17 points. In 2008, John McCain won it by 11 points. It has a track record of going red.
It is. Well, Bill Hemmer, I hope you come back more often.
Nice to see you.
I love the billboard. The billboard, I'm going to call it. You have to pause. Make it exciting. Thank you. All right, joining us for more on tomorrow's special election is former Missouri Secretary of State Jason Kander. He's an Army veteran, president of Let America Vote, and host of the podcast Majority 54, which I highly recommend to everybody who loves the podcast, and you know I do. Jason, you saw, I think, those polling numbers from Monmouth showing that that Connor Lamb is up in various turnout scenarios. Did you expect this going into this race?
Well, you know, I'm not exactly sure what I expected. I mean, just as you just pointed out, I mean, this is a Republican district. This is a deep red district that President Trump won by 20 points. But I'm not at all surprised that a candidate like Conor Lamb, a veteran, a prosecutor, somebody who the folks in this district know is going to fight for them, that he's doing as well as he's doing. And I would think it's pretty bad news for the Republican Party nationally when a district that the president won by 20, a district that I don't even think they fielded a Democratic candidate last time,
right,
that they've got this fight on their hands, and it looks like a pretty good chance Conor wins tomorrow.
So an interesting thing to me is that the Republican Congressional Committee has spent 11 times more than the DCCC, $3.5 million to $312,000 from the DCCC. Now, Rex Saccone has raised a lot less money than Conor Lamb has personally, so maybe that's how it works out. But when it comes to finding a candidate like this for the Democrats to run, why didn't the Democrats want to invest more in the possibility that he could win?
Well, I can't speak for the folks at the DCCC because I don't work there. But what I can tell you is that you've sort of alluded to the fact that it looks like Conor's opponent doesn't have that much support in the district. He hasn't really had the ability to raise a lot of money and get a lot of enthusiasm for his own campaign. So the national party, the establishment in Washington, is coming in to try and save him because they want to hang on to the seat. But it looks to me like folks in the Pennsylvania 18th see somebody in Conor, a veteran, a prosecutor, somebody who has done something in his life that is harder than this campaign. Yeah. It's pretty appealing to folks across both sides of the political spectrum.
You know, one thing that I noted that, you know, obviously he's a good candidate for this particular district, and he did not have a primary, speaking of Conor Lamb. So, but that's not true all across other districts in America, especially when you have, you know, sometimes 8 to 10 Democrats running. And Josh Kroshar, who's a columnist for a national journal, we call him Hotline Josh on Twitter, he wrote that Democratic primary voters aren't looking for electability. Most want to be part of the resistance. If enthusiasm alone is enough to generate a sizable Democratic wave, it may not matter how qualified their congressional candidates are. But if there are enough suburban independent voters up for grabs, Democrats could squander winnable seats by nominating some not ready for primetime players. And I would say that, you know, in 2010, the Republicans did quite the same. Your thoughts on that?
Well, look, Josh is a strategist. I'm not a strategist. I'm just a guy out here.
He's just a columnist.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Okay, Dana. But what I would say is that I've been in 34 states in the past year. Some of them, like here in Colorado, I've been more than once. And what I've seen is that, yeah, there's an awful lot of folks who are really unhappy with the direction that the president is taking this country, direction that the Republican Congress is taking it. And yeah, there's a lot of people wanting to run on the Democratic side. Sometimes that means primaries. But as long as people are authentically running on what they believe, then that's going to have good results because voters respond to that.
And it's not all uniform that Democrats are against what President Trump is doing. In fact, Conor Lamb in Pennsylvania 18, quite supportive of the tariffs that the president introduced last week, saying he was all for it. And even John Tester, we're going to talk about this later in the show. He's the senator from Montana, who is up for re-election, who's just cut an ad basically saying, you know, there's some good things happening on the federal front. So it seems to me it's not as black and white as it used to be when it comes to these issue fights, especially if you have a president who is willing to sort of take on some populist issues that Democrats really like.
Yeah, look, this is the Democratic Party. It's a big party. I mean, I'm a progressive, but my point of view on this is as long as people, no matter where you come from on these issues, as long as you are on the Democratic side and really coming at it from a genuine place, not trying to figure out where the voters are and follow them, but really just saying exactly what you believe, that's really what voters are looking for. My experience has always been, you know, like I'm a progressive guy who's won statewide in a red state. It's always been that what voters really want is they want to know that you really believe what you're saying and you believe it because you care about them. And that's clearly what Conor Lamb is doing in the Pennsylvania 18th, and I think it's going to make a difference. I think you're going to see the Democrat win tomorrow. When
the race is called tomorrow night, whether it's a narrow win or a narrow loss for Conor Lamb, what does that tell you about possibly any of the other districts across the country?
Well, look, I mean, since President Trump took office, there have been 41 seats at the legislative and various levels that have switched from Republican to Democratic. This is a district, like we said, where the Democrats didn't field the candidate last time, and the President of the United States just had to go there and campaign. I mean, no matter what happens, you can really, I think you can count on the idea that there's probably going to be more Republican retirements between now and November. And not only that, I think we have a very good chance of taking the House. Remember, this is a very close race in a district that we actually don't need in order to take the House.
Understood. All right, Jason, you know you're in my hometown there, so I hope you go over to Governor's Park Tavern, get a good lunch so you can have a good rest of the day. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for the recommendation. Thanks for having me.
A look at the White House as the briefing set at the bottom of this hour, and we'll take you there live. Plus, Elizabeth Warren making a big announcement about her future plans. Does she plan to take on the president in 2020?
President for life, that sounds good. Maybe we're going to have to try it. President for life. But I'm joking. But I'm joking.
Fox News alert. UK Prime Minister Theresa May now saying it's highly likely Russia is behind the poisoning of a former Russian spy. Sergei Skripal and his daughter remain in critical condition after being attacked with a military-grade nerve agent. Prime Minister May saying if Moscow is proven to be behind the attack, her government will consider it an unlawful use of force.
Our knowledge that Russia has previously produced this agent and would still be capable of doing so, Russia's record of conducting state-sponsored assassinations, and our assessment that Russia views some defectors as legitimate targets for assassinations, the government has concluded that it is highly likely that Russia was responsible for the act against Sergei and Yulia Skripal.
Russia's ambassador to the UK has been summoned to explain how a Russian nerve agent turned up in Britain. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren saying she will not run for president in 2020. The progressive Democrat appeared on Fox News Sunday. She also declined to take a DNA test after repeated challenges to her claims of Native American ancestry.
I'm not running for president, but let me tell you a little bit about my family. You know, my mom and dad were born and raised out in Oklahoma, and my daddy was in his teens when he fell in love with my mother. I know who I am because of what my mother and my father told me, what my grandmother and my grandfather told me, what all my aunts and uncles told me, and my brothers. It's a part of who I am, and no one's ever going to take that away.
I'm joined now by Colin Reed, Senior Vice President of Definers Public Affairs and a Boston Herald columnist, as well as Michael Meehan, President and CEO of Squared Communications, both from Massachusetts, and I'm glad to have you here today. Colin, you worked on opposition research during the Scott Brown race up there in Massachusetts. You know a lot about the state. You know a lot about Elizabeth Warren. Do you think she's planning to run for president?
Well, Dana, I found her answer yesterday very Clinton-esque. She gave herself a nice little wiggle room by saying she's not currently running for president in the current tense, certainly leaving the room down the road to do it if she wanted to. But look, I think it's pretty clear that she has a hometown problem on her hand if she decides to run. First of all, the Berkshire Eagle is a very liberal editorial board, and they are the newspaper of record who called on her to take the DNA test, which to me gets at a bigger point that was never really resolved in the 2012 campaign, which is whether or not Elizabeth Warren got an unfair professional advantage by claiming minority status she wasn't entitled to. But the other thing that's kind of slipped from people's radar a bit is at the same time that all this Elizabeth Warren noise is going on, the former Democratic governor of Massachusetts, Deval Patrick, is also making noise about a potential White House run. So if Warren is thinking of running for the White House, she's already got Bernie Sanders up there, who's by all intents and purposes running for president. And then if Deval Patrick also gets in the race, that's a pretty crowded field, and her lane to the White House might not be so open anymore.
And Michael, Elizabeth Warren actually has a lower approval rating than the Republican governor of Massachusetts right now. And yet, you know, she says she's not running in 2020, that she's going to focus on 2018. But just last week, she announced she was going to give $5,000 to every state of the union that has, you know, for their Democratic Party efforts. So why would you do that if you're not thinking about running for president?
Well, she clearly, I take her at her word, she's not running for president. But people in Massachusetts have been running for politics since we dumped the British tea into the harbor there. So clearly, you know, and there hasn't been an election cycle since all of us have been alive that a Massachusetts somebody, whether it's Governor Romney or whether it's Ted Kennedy or John Kennedy, hasn't been on the ballot. So she's one of the most popular figures on the left in our party. She's got $14 million in the bank. So the fact that she wants to spend $250,000 helping state parties out, it's good for her. Everyone will accept that. I take her at her word. She's not going to run for president. Why would you want that job? be U.S. Senator for the rest of your life.
Well, there's
Why
going to
would you
be
want that
probably
job?
20 Democrats that are going to go for that, so we'll find out who really wants the job. In the meantime, there's other news. The president today, and just last night, releasing some basic details for dealing with gun safety. His Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, had this to say.
Everything is on the table, and part of the job of this commission will be to study that and see if that is advanced ultimately as a recommendation in next steps. The point being, there are many steps to be taken now and additional steps that will be taken down the road as we do the work of the commission.
Colin, while it's important to try to separate politics from policy here, because I think all of us want safer schools, it is almost impossible to actually separate them, especially when things are so highly charged. With this proposal by the president of not doing the increasing of the age limit, it seems to me that he may have heard from enough people around the country who said, you know, that's just not going to fly in our states. Let's try to look at other issues. How do you think this plays for 2018?
Well, I don't know how it'll play for 2018, but I do think it's a good thing we're at least having the conversation. In the past, these school shootings have happened. It's been terrible. It's been tragic. And then all of a sudden, the issue kind of fades from the headlines. And now I think with these kids being out there, making the issue clear and saying they're not going to let it go, I think it's good that the conversation is at least moving forward, and we'll see where it goes.
Michael, I saw, I don't know if my team will have it. I had it for the last block, but ran out of time. Quinnipiac has a new poll out asking, do you support or oppose requiring individuals to be 21 years of age or older in order to purchase a gun? And 78% of people said that they did support that, while in the same poll, 58% of people oppose allowing teachers and school officials to carry guns on school grounds. So as this conversation goes forward, do you think the Democrats will remain unsatisfied in terms of the pace of progress?
Well, if you're going to be 21 years old to get a bud, you should be 21 years old to get an AR-15. That's a very simple thing. And I give credit to the Florida legislators who actually went against some very powerful interests there to make some of these incremental gains. Arming school teachers, yeah, if you're a retired military veteran and you know how to handle a gun, and then you go in and teach in a classroom, I'm all for you having a gun at school. I'm not for the average 23-year-old who's going in there teaching my elementary school kids to then become experts in handling guns. That's a very different issue.
Actually, I think that you and the president might agree on that. So, hey, we have lots of agreement. We have Massachusetts. We have all sorts of things. I think you probably both support Tom Brady, too.
Oh, yeah.
And we'd love to have you back again. Colin Reed and Michael Meehan, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dana.
We are awaiting a briefing from Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. We'll take you to the White House as soon as it begins. Plus, a live look at Austin, Texas, where police are investigating another package explosion. That story coming up next. Fox News alert, a third explosion is reported in Austin, Texas, after police there linked two deadly packages that had bombs in them in that city. This latest explosion badly injuring a woman, and Adam Housley is live with more on this. Adam, this is a strange story, and a disturbing one, too.
Yeah, it really is, Dana. It's been going on now for a couple of weeks in Austin, Texas. This is the third explosion, at least been confirmed by authorities there thus far. The first one was back on earlier in March, and that killed a man. The one this morning, early this morning in the 6 a.m. hour, killed a teenage boy and injured another woman at the house. Right now, the only connection they're saying between those two is that both families were black. They're not ruling out the possibility this is racially motivated. At the same time, they're not saying it is. They're saying they don't believe it's terrorism, although you could argue it's domestic terrorism, depending on what's going on here. This third explosion just happened recently. In fact, in the last hour or so. Dana, here's what we know. We're told that a woman in her 70s was badly injured. Another woman was not injured from the blast at this most recent explosion, but she was taken to a hospital with another injury from whatever took place there. They're not confirming this most recent blast today was an explosion from a package. So here's what we have. We have the one from earlier in March. We have the one this morning, and now we have the one in the last hour or so at another home in a different part of the city. It's all they're telling us at this point. They have put out a warning now in the area for anybody. If you receive a package that you're not expecting or looks suspicious, do not open it. Call 911. They don't believe these packages were delivered via the mail or via package service. They believe at this point they probably were set on people's doorsteps. That's where we're at right now, Dana. A lot going on here. Obviously very fluid. We'll keep you updated on the situation in Austin, but very disturbing to say the least at this hour, as there's been 3 explosions. And by the way, as the backdrop of all this is South by Southwest is going on right now. Dana?
Indeed. All right, Adam, thank you.
Okay.
Now for a look at some other stories you may have missed, from Elon Musk to Tim McGraw, it's More to Know with Brian Kilmeade. So people are loving this segment. Because you tell me what you think I need to know more about.
Which I think, and I could be wrong.
Yeah, you might be. So let's test you. How you
so there were a lot of stories to focus on this weekend. Maybe perhaps because you're on this channel, you weren't watching enough about Stormy Daniels. And she is back in the news. She evidently taped an interview already with Anderson Cooper, at which time she says it's supposed to air on the 18th. The problem is, lawyers say she signed a document that said, here's $130,000, don't tell your story. Now, no one alleges that President Trump, then just businessman Trump, committed any type of crime. She just wants to talk about the relationship and cash in. This allows CNN reporters to follow her to X-rated dance clubs at night to try to get the exclusive story, which must be odd to wait for a woman to come out of a club that causes a lot of money and to get some sound bites, which she does off camera.
It might make you think, why did I go to journalism school
exactly.
again?
By the way, it's just not a story. I mean, put it this way, I thought it was put best by Matt Bai over the weekend and Peggy Noonan. If this was something that happened in office, that's one thing. Hypocrisy is what's been reported on. There's no hypocrisy here. People know what Donald Trump was doing before.
Well, I guess people are saying about if the payment was made right before the election, that's why it makes it relevant. But anyway, I agree.
Right. So this was dated back in 2006. We're going to find out. She's offered to give the money back in order to air the Anderson Cooper interview.
Oh yeah, I don't know if that's going to work.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I don't have any experience in that area, nor have I seen any of her movies.
All right, what else do you have?
Well, I got this. It turns out she wants to move on. Elon Musk, who tends to invent things and try things that normally wouldn't. For example, there was traffic in Los Angeles. So he says, I have an idea. Let's make an idea. Let's make a tunnel. Well, he's on South by Southwest, Dana, and he decides, I got to tell you, space is going well. I'm probably next year going to have a ship ready to go to Mars.
Right, and are you going to buy a ticket?
I don't think I'm going to go because he has no way to really get back. And, you know, he tends to fail in the beginning. I want him to work out their bugs.
Right, so maybe like in 3 years.
Right, and I'm thinking, too, he says one of his searches is going to be for water. And he's going to look to have 2 vehicles there to search for water. Once we find water, evidently it's just a matter of time before we get strip malls. And they won't be able to go on Mars. I wouldn't mind. I would be searching for a place to live on another planet if we were out of room. But we have a lot of room.
I think we're in good shape so far.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that he is using private money to do this kind of exploration.
Right, for the most part, but not totally.
You had something about a country music star?
Tim McGraw married Faith Hill.
Yep.
They're both
power couple.
Yes, they're both very good singers. And being that all the other venues here in America are sold out, they went to Ireland. These are stills of Tim McGraw, and he was singing "Humble and Kind," a very controversial song about living life to its true self, and he passes out. It turns out he didn't drink enough water. So he passes out. And this is the problem with appearing with your wife. Your wife decides, I'm not going to do this anymore. My husband's done for the day. Now, if you're out with the guys and you're in a band, am I right? The guy in the band goes, get back out there, give him some water, give him some Evian, and we'll get going.
I've read stories that he is a big fitness buff and he works out all the time. So maybe he's just like overdoing it.
Well, put it this way. He seems to be in very good shape because he forgets to wear sleeves and shirts. He wears leather vests.
Yeah, you don't have that problem.
Right. What, you know, I have plenty of sleeves. That hurts my feelings, Dana. But just going to show you, it's good to be on the road with your wife, but when it comes to any type of injury, they look out for your welfare. They don't care about the Irish audience.
Yeah.
Once again, a week from St. Patrick's Day, the Irish have to put up this type of tribulation.
The poor Irish. I'm sure they'll go back. Well, Brian, thank you.
Thanks
now I know all I need to know on a Monday. I love it.
Maybe too much by look in your face?
No, I really like it.
Okay, good.
I mean, you know I love country music.
I know you do.
All right. Well, live to the White House, where we are awaiting Sarah Sanders and the press briefing, plus Senator Jon Tester is a Democrat running for re-election in Montana. So why is Tester promoting President Trump in his latest campaign ad?
Washington's a mess, but that's not stopping me from getting bills to help Montana signed into law by President Trump.
Fox News alert as we await the White House briefing to begin any moment now. Jon Tester is a Democrat running for re-election in a red state that the president won overwhelmingly in 2016. Take a look at how the Montana senator is featuring Mr. Trump in his new campaign ad.
Washington's a mess, but that's not stopping me from getting bills to help Montana signed into law by President Trump. 1, reducing government waste, fraud, and abuse. 8, I'm out of fingers, but I'm not fit.
Joining me now, Chris Starwalt, Fox News politics editor and editor of the Halftime Report. Chris, there's something happening here. in Montana.
Yes.
Can you clear it up for us?
I'm out of fingers was not the campaign slogan that I expected to see in 2018, but 2018 going to 2018.
Great hashtag.
That's right. I'm out of fingers. Look, the key for John Tester is he doesn't have, well, to back up, when Donald Trump picked Ryan Zinke to come into his cabinet, right, he was doing a couple of things, but one of them was depriving Republicans of their best bet, already elected statewide, their best bet to knock off Tester. So I'm not saying that Republicans ceded the race, but to a certain degree, it took it off of their top tier. Now, as they're trying to settle on a nominee, they're trying to figure out what they're doing. They don't have any great stakes or any great shakes yet. Tester is trying to get out in front while he has the resources and while he has the opportunity, so that when the Republicans eventually come and say he is a liberal Democrat, he is a wolf in sheep's clothing, that he can say, wait a minute, you already know, I've demonstrated I'm completely, perfectly willing to work with Donald Trump. He's going, I'm not hashtag resist, I'm hashtag out of fingers.
Out of fingers. Indeed. Can I ask you about California? Because I was interested in this story today that Politico ran about Orange County, California, which has always been, as I remember, you know, I lived in San Diego for quite a while. I was pretty familiar with California politics, and the Orange County suburbs were reliably Republican, and there's a belief among some that maybe that is changing, and President Trump is headed to Southern California tomorrow. Do you think that at least Orange County is changing a little bit?
Very much so, and it's really a threefold demographic challenge for Republicans. One, you have a lot of new immigrants, not just Hispanic immigrants, but Asian immigrants who have come into that region, who also have moved into the suburbs, who also look at things differently. And Republicans, as we know, have struggled with minority voters a lot. So there's that part, but there's also this, the exodus out of California as people who are successful and more affluent have fled California for places like Texas, for places like Nevada. It has hurt Republicans in California because they've lost part of their base. So it's a demographic double whammy. And even there in very Republican, very conservative enclaves like Orange County, it's taken its toll.
It's interesting. I wanted to also play one more thing for you. Senator Jeff Flake was on Meet the Press yesterday. He's already talking about 2020 and what needs to happen to President Trump in that year. Watch.
He's running for re-election already. He announced that last night. Right. Basically, do you think he needs to be challenged from somebody who espouses your views?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. I mean, it would be a tough go in a Republican primary. The Republican Party is the Trump party right now, but that's not to say it will stay that way.
It's pretty unusual, I think, in more modern politics for the incumbent president running for re-election to draw a primary challenger. Is 2020 one of those years that would be an aberration?
Well, Donald Trump will draw a primary challenger or multiple primary challengers. The question is, do they find purchase? Is there a way that they can get in the discussion? Remember, there will be a couple thousand people who file for and run for president, and all but a couple of them in 2020 will amount to nothing. The question is, can somebody get in there and dig? And what Flake, if you listen to the undertone on what Flake's saying, he is looking to be a tan, skinny William Howard Taft, maybe, which is to say he would rather keep the Republican Party conservative, take it away from Trump, and perhaps lose to a Democrat in 2020, divide the party against itself and lose, rather than let Trump stay in control. That's a big matzo ball for Jeff Flake to be putting out there. But if anybody's going to do it, he might.
Well, that would be that. Yeah, I'm thinking that might not work, but I'm going to think about it a little bit more, and I'll talk to you about it later in the week and on our podcast. All right, Chris Starwell, thank you.
You bet.
Now to the Syrian civil war, where a rebel-held city in eastern Ghouta faces a catastrophic situation after nearly 3 weeks of relentless strikes by government forces. Connor Powell is live in Jerusalem. Connor, I saw today the report that 500,000 civilians have been killed in this civil war.
Yeah, and just in the last 3 weeks in eastern Ghouta, more than 1,000 people have been killed there. This is some of the heaviest fighting we've seen in the last 7 years, and that says a lot because this war in Syria has been extremely brutal and bloody and violent. And in the last 24 hours, we're getting messaging from the Trump administration from 3 different officials warning the Assad regime about the use of chemical weapons. Now, of course, just about a year ago that President Trump ordered the U.S. Navy to fire 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles in response to a sarin gas attack that they pinned on the Assad regime. And since then, there have been very few reports of chemical weapons attacks, but just in the last couple of weeks, there are reports that there have been the use of chlorinated gas in eastern Ghouta. And today, Nikki Haley basically said that there would be consequences. This comes after Secretary of Defense Mattis said yesterday that it would be unwise. The administration is clearly laying the groundwork for some type of retaliation if there is hard evidence. And this is the key point, because Secretary Mattis said he had yet to see any key evidence, hard evidence, that there had been chemical weapons used in eastern Ghouta. But the administration is clearly looking into this. So is the international community. And Dana, this is the sort of what we're seeing, is that the Assad regime, backed by Russia, pushing the limits of what they can get away with in eastern Ghouta. And now we're beginning to see, because nobody's really pushing back against them, that there may be the use of chemical weapons. Now, for the Assad regime's part, they say that they've actually found a rebel workshop that is building chemical weapons. So they're trying to pin this on the rebels now as well. Dana.
All right, Connor Powell, thank you.